Hey, what's up? It's TechSumo here. Do you have an iPhone 13 Pro Max? And are you currently thinking about buying an iPhone 15 Pro Max? Well, in today's video, I will compare them both, show you what are all the differences, what are the new features on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the new upgrades, what should you expect if you decide to upgrade, and finally, answer the big question, should you upgrade or not? So, if you are excited for today's video, do not forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. I will have several comparisons from the iPhone 15 Pro Max against the iPhone 14 Pro Max, 12 Pro Max. Today's video is against the iPhone 13 Pro Max. I will also have the full review and, of course, a camera comparison against a full mirrorless Sony camera. So, if you are excited for that, drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel. Roll the intro. So, I just gotten the iPhone 15 Pro Max last week on Friday, and I gotta tell you that this iPhone is really good. I've been using it for the last 5 days and I really enjoy it. Like, this phone has overpassed all the expectations because, in my opinion, this has been the biggest upgrade in a while. And now I decided to compare it against the iPhone 13 Pro Max because I do believe that most of you watching today's video have these two phones. You have an iPhone 13 Pro Max, 12 Pro Max, even the iPhone 11 Pro Max, not just the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And you are deciding between, do I still keep my iPhone 13 Pro Max for one more year, or do I buy the newest and shiniest iPhone 15 Pro Max? So, of course, in today's video, I want to answer that question. But obviously, you should only upgrade if you have the means to do so. Don't waste your money on these things if you don't have the money to do so. So again, if you are undecided if you want to upgrade or not, then watch this video until the end so you actually understand what are the all differences, new features from the iPhone 15 Pro Max against the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So, to first talk about the design, the iPhone 15 Pro Max features a new design when compared to the iPhone 13 Pro Max. The iPhone 13 Pro Max features the same old flat edge design from the iPhone 12 Pro Max. This phone is an S here in terms of design when compared to the newest and shiniest 12 Pro Max. Of course, this design is, in my opinion, premium, heavy feeling, and in my opinion, kind of uncomfortable, while the iPhone 15 Pro Max has a way more comfortable design with the new contoured edges. But again, this is not a better design objectively than this one. These are very two similar designs. The only difference that Apple, I think, they refined the iPhone 13 Pro Max design on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And so I do believe that this design is lighter, more comfortable, and in my opinion, better feeling in the hand. While the design of the iPhone 13 Pro Max is extremely premium feeling, but it's kind of heavy, and it gets synced with the sharp edges onto your hand. I don't know which one would you prefer. In my opinion, I prefer the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but that's something you gotta hold on your hand. Again, if you are deciding between these two phones, go to an Apple store, go to a tech store, and hold the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Because if the heftiness, if the weight, if the bulkiness, and of course the sharp-edged feeling was not your favorite thing on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the iPhone 15 Pro Max fixes all of that. The new titanium frame based with aluminum is way lighter, and the weight distribution between these two phones is way better. Because even though the weights of these two phones are really close, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the lightest iPhone Pro model ever since the iPhone 11 Pro. So it's actually the lightest Pro Max model ever made. While the iPhone 13 Pro Max was heavier than the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which in case was heavier than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The only phone heavier than the iPhone 13 Pro Max was the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And that phone was the pinnacle of the heavy premium feeling of the iPhone. I do believe this new titanium frame is better objectively than the stainless steel. Although the stainless steel, according to drop tests, might be more durable because the iPhone is not breaking as easily, especially the back glass, titanium is way more resistant to the impact. Although the stainless steel might protect better the glass, it will show fingerprints and will show damage easier than the titanium. Titanium is really durable. Maybe because of the durability of titanium, the tensile strength of this material, the back glass is breaking more easily, because when you try to fold the iPhone 15 Pro Max, if you are trying to do this to your phone, if you are trying to fold it, it will not bend. And because titanium does not bend even the slightest, because the tensile strength is really high, then the only thing that will bend is the glass. When you try to bend like this, your iPhone, because of the MagSafe charger weakness here on the back plate aluminum, what will happen is your phone will break. This is kind of a fault found by some people now on the iPhone 15 Pro Max drop tests and durability tests, but I do believe this is not a problem. While the iPhone 13 Pro Max is extremely durable. I've used this phone without a case for the last 2 years, and the only signs of degradation that I have is on the battery. Like, it's incredible. I have a very small chip on the small right down corner because I dropped my iPhone, and on the concrete floor, it actually broke just a tiny bit my iPhone back glass. But it's truly expensive to replace this back glass on the older design. While with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, Apple solved that issue because they redesigned the back panel of the iPhone so it's easier to remove and easily replaceable. It only costs you right now $200, while before it would cost you up to $600. So $400 of a difference if you actually break your back glass. But I don't think that's all for the design of these two phones. Again, titanium, stainless steel. Again, contoured edges, flat edges. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, I think this is the biggest deal. The iPhone 15 Pro Max edges just make this phone way more comfortable to hold on your hand. Like, it's way better to hold, way more comfortable, feels nice for long periods of time. While the iPhone 13 Pro Max feels like you are holding some type of knife. After a while, it kind of cuts into your hand and it hurts a bit. If you are holding the iPhone 13 Pro Max for long periods of time, you will actually start to notice that this phone will cut into your hand and it will actually hurt and being uncomfortable. While the iPhone 15 Pro Max will always be very comfortable. But of course, these two designs, apart from titanium, apart from the contoured edges, apart from the better weight distribution, they are very similar. So at the end of the day, they do still have the same 3-camera design, they do still have the same flat edges, they do still have the same design from the front. So at the end of the day, if you buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max and you have the iPhone 13 Pro Max, by looking at it, you won't notice that much of a difference. But as soon as you pick it up, trust me, you will. So objectively, I do believe that the iPhone 15 Pro Max design is a better one. So if you are tired of the heftiness and the uncomfortable feeling of the iPhone 13 Pro Max, upgrading to the iPhone 15 Pro Max might solve that issue. Let's talk about USB-C. I want to start talking about that right on the beginning of this comparison because I do believe that USB-C is the biggest change between these two phones. Although this one has ProMotion, this one also has ProMotion. Although this one has Dynamic Island, this one doesn't have Dynamic Island. This one has the new design, has the 5x telephoto, so many changes to the camera software. I do believe that USB-C on this phone is such a big of a change that Lightning ports right now are completely outdated. USB-C 3.0 is now available on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and this makes the iPhone 13 Pro Max completely obsolete, in my opinion. USB-C is such a good thing on the iPhone 15 Pro Max that I do believe that you can upgrade just for that. USB-C just makes your life much easier. It's the same cable as the MacBook charger, the iPad charger, my camera charger. Every single device now will have USB-C to charge it. So a universal port is a very big advantage. But also, trust me, this is one of the biggest ones, is the new features that USB-C unlocks. For example, charging your Apple Watch, charging other people's iPhones, your friends' iPhones, other Android phones. These USB-C unlocks so many realms for the new iPhone 15s that I do believe they are the biggest change on this new lineup of iPhones. Of course, it also enables for the Pro model, especially the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the ProRes 60 frames per second to external SSDs, recording ProRes 30 frames per second and other formats to external SSDs. Also enables the direct transfer of ProRAW photos to the Capture One program, enables much faster transfer speeds between ProRes footage of your iPhone to your computer and your editing program, enables so many more features, like, for example, using a secondary display for your iPhone with a USB-C display. This is so cool, playing games. You can also now, with the AAA titles that Apple will make available for the iPhone 15, you will be able to use this USB-C port to play those titles on a secondary 30-inch display if you want to, gaming monitor if you want to, like, that's huge, that's a very big deal. While the Lightning cable on the iPhone 13 Pro Max is extremely limited. This port can only charge up to 25 watts, the same one as this one, 25 or 30, but it's about that. This one has not increased the charging speeds, but with so much features added just with USB-C 3.0, I can forgive Apple. Like, this device cannot charge other iPhones, cannot charge your accessories like your Apple Watch or your AirPods, cannot do anything besides transferring very slow data, like at 500 megabytes per second, while this one can transfer up to 10 gigabits per second. Of course, transferring speeds are not all, but if you are transferring 40 gigs of ProRes footage from this iPhone to your computer and from this iPhone to your computer, this will take, I don't know, a few minutes, while this one could take up to almost 1 hour. It's ridiculous. Trust me. So USB-C on the iPhone is big. And if you do a lot of these things that I've talked about, like recording ProRes footage, recording lots of video footage for your video editing programs, filming videos for YouTube, I do believe that USB-C is totally worth it. And of course, the extra features like charging your Apple Watch, your AirPods, and other iPhones are a very, very big bonus. So for the port itself, just for USB-C, I do believe the upgrade is worth it. Then, of course, let's talk about the two displays on these two iPhones. The iPhone 15 Pro Max features the 6.7-inch ProMotion 2000 nits peak brightness, 1600 nits sustainable brightness display. This display is really good. It's even better than the iPhone 13 Pro Max and 14 Pro Max. This is about the same display as the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but with a subtle difference. The bezels on this phone are much smaller. Like, you can notice it if you look at it, like they are much smaller. This is the smallest bezeled phone in the world, while the iPhone 13 Pro Max is behind 2 generations on the display. The iPhone 13 Pro Max features an even worse display than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's not to say this is a bad display. It isn't. It's still ProMotion capable. It's an OLED display. The contrast ratio is still really good. It's 1200 nits peak brightness. This display is a banger. It's a really good value for your money. This phone right now is really good value. Like, trust me, this is the best value iPhone for like 2023 in my opinion. But I do believe that if you have this phone and you want to upgrade for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the only difference you will notice will be, of course, the bezels. Of course, the brightness, you will notice outside, but I don't think it's a pretty big deal. It's a good thing to have. It's a nice thing to have, but I do believe that the iPhone 15 Pro Max display is really on par with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I don't think for the display alone is worth the upgrade. The iPhone 13 Pro Max has 120 Hz. The iPhone 13 Pro Max has about the same display bezels as the iPhone 15 Pro Max. These one are much smaller, but this one is also small, so you will not probably do really care about that. But the only differences between these two displays, apart from the bezel size and the peak brightness, is dynamic island. The iPhone 14 Pro Max introduced that feature, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max keeps that feature, while the iPhone 13 Pro Max doesn't have it. Has the old, smaller notch. I think it's the less wide notch, but also taller notch. I don't know. It's a preference. I do really enjoy dynamic island. I do think dynamic island is a really useful feature. I don't think I can switch back to a phone that doesn't have dynamic island. I don't know. I've used the iPhone 13 Pro Max for like 1 week after I sold my iPhone 14 Pro Max, and it's a testament to say that I actually did not miss my iPhone 14 Pro Max. But since I switched back to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, I kind of noticed that dynamic island was useful for a while. And now I use it for a lot of things: music, check my flight updates, check my podcasts. I don't know. I use for the same features that you're probably using your dynamic island. And I think that dynamic island, in my opinion, is a very underrated feature. Then with the coming up of the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus and the introduction of dynamic island on those phones, it will be way more useful in the future. More phones mean more clients means more business. So I do believe business and other developers will make more things to dynamic island and will explore this incredible feature. So again, to summarize the differences between these two displays, the peak brightness, this one is 2000 nits, this one is 1200 nits, and of course, this one has dynamic island and smaller bezels, while this one has the older notch and of course, bigger bezels. So in terms of displays, there's not much that I can talk about. If you do like dynamic island, that might be a good point for you and might be something to upgrade for, but I do believe the extra upgrades on display are a nice bonus because USB-C is just worth it all alone. If you want to know more about battery life, these two phones perform really close. The iPhone 13 Pro Max was the best battery iPhone ever before the iPhone 15 Pro Max and now the iPhone 15 Plus. So the iPhone 13 Pro Max was the battery champion, even better than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But now, according to battery tests, the iPhone 15 Pro Max just topped it up for, I think, 1 hour. So yeah, they do have about the same battery life. I've used the iPhone 15 Pro Max for the last 5 days, and I gotta tell you that the battery is about the same as my iPhone 13 Pro Max for the week before. So this phone still has a very good battery health. I think it's 90%. So the degradation is about the same. The difference is, of course, that 10% difference was about what I experienced. This phone could last me like 1 hour more than the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But I do believe right now it's like 8 o'clock and I do have 55%. So yeah, 55% at 8 o'clock, it's a normal day for me. I don't use my phone a lot now that I have my mirrorless camera. I use it to check my stats on YouTube channel, to run my social media, and then to use it for calls and texts, but I don't play games. So I'm not that big of a power user. I end my days usually with 40%. With the iPhone 13 Pro Max last week, I think I ended the day with around 20-30%. Again, it's 90% degraded, so yeah, you gotta actually calculate for the margin of error on that. But I think in battery life, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a bit better. If you want to upgrade your phone for the battery, don't expect really good battery life. Expect like on par battery life with your new iPhone 13 Pro Max, at least when it was new. If you have an iPhone 13 Pro Max with degraded battery and you just really care about battery life, then I would recommend to switch the battery on your phone. It's like $100. It's cheaper than buying a new phone and you will feel completely new. Like you don't have any issues with the rest of the phone. Switch out the battery and you will thank me later. Let's talk about the cameras, because I do believe that's the thing you want to hear most about these two phones and compare, because I do believe that most people nowadays upgrade their phones because of their cameras. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, trust me, is a huge upgrade over the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And when you compare it to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, a bigger upgrade it is, because it's so much better, trust me. HDR has been fixed on the iPhone. The photos look realistic. They look true to life. They look like a mirrorless camera. It's weird, like I don't know how Apple did it, but they fixed all the issues that I had with the algorithm on the cameras of this phone. The 48 megapixel sensor is insane, like I don't know how to tell you. Now Apple downscales their 48 megapixel shots to 24. Before they used the 48 to 12 on the 14 Pro Max, and on the iPhone 13 Pro Max it has a 12 megapixel main camera. This main camera sensor is bigger, so it catches more light, looks natural. I think that the thing that Apple did was increase the sensor size on these phones, especially on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and you will notice the difference if you upgrade from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the 15 Pro Max. The photos will look way more realistic, they will look like a camera, and the video side, oh my god, trust me, you will notice the difference. This video is much, much better, it's less noisy, the natural background blur is better, and of course, the differences in camera features are getting really, really, really big. Because the iPhone 15 Pro Max can shoot in 0.5, just like the iPhone 13 Pro Max, can shoot in 1x, can shoot in 1.2x, 1.5x, 2x, and 5x. While the iPhone 13 Pro Max can only shoot at 0.5, the ultra-wide, the 1x, the main camera, and the 3x, the telephoto. So with the ultra-wide cameras, the difference, well, is not that big, because the iPhone 15 Pro Max ultra-wide is about the same as the 14 Pro Max, and that camera was about the same as the 13 Pro Max. They both feature macro photography. It was introduced with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, so I think they are really close on that regard. But if you jump up to the main camera, whoa, you really start to notice the difference. Between these two, the main camera, 24 megapixel shot is much sharper, and if you want to, you can take 48 megapixels Pro RAW photos with the iPhone 15 Pro Max main camera. With the iPhone 13 Pro Max, you don't have that option, so if you want to take very high resolution photos to print, or if you want to take photos to a big landscape and you want to peep the detail, you don't have that option with the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but you do with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Of course, this main camera, because of the 48 megapixel sensor, can also crop in 1.2 times, 1.5 times, and 2 times, just like the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The 14 Pro Max could only crop in 2 times. Now Apple has added the option to crop in 1.2 times, 1.5 times. So a 28 and a 35 millimeter equivalent on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's a neat feature if you want to use a very different focal length, but I do believe that the big difference will be on the main camera and of course the telephoto. The telephoto on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the 5x telephoto, optically stabilized, or like Apple likes to call it, a 3D stabilization. This is a tetrascope lens, difficult to say, but even more difficult to understand. Because of some very, very intelligent technology, Apple has enabled a 5x telephoto camera on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And so it's way better at zooming further than the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So if you do like taking zoom shots, if you do enjoy very nice portrait photos and natural background blur with the portrait mode, the iPhone 15 Pro Max 5x telephoto is way better than the iPhone 13 Pro Max and 40 Pro Max telephoto. It's way sharper, better in low light, it's just better in general. So if you do care about the cameras, I do believe the upgrade from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the iPhone 15 Pro Max is totally worth it. But that's something you gotta analyze after all the features that I've talked about. Is it worth it to spend the extra $400, $450 from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the iPhone 15 Pro Max? because you can sell your phone right now for currently $600, maybe if you are lucky, and pay the extra for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Well, that's something you gotta decide. But I gotta tell you, the automatic portrait mode on the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a huge feature on the camera side that I think most people are not talking about, and it's really, really useful. Like, trust me, you will like it a lot. You can take photos, normal photos, whenever you want to a subject, to an animal, and after the fact, you can add and change the focus. So you can add the bokeh later on the editing scene, you can change the focus on whatever subject you want, and that's on a picture, not a video. Just like cinematic mode was before, now you can do it on the camera side. Really, really useful. And of course, I forgot to talk about the fact that it can record ProRes 4K 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second here. Here, you can all record ProRes at 30 frames per second. The cinematic mode here can record at 4K 30 frames per second, just like the iPhone 14 Pro Max here at only 1080p, 30 frames per second. So if you like that, use that. Again, the upgrade might be worth it for you. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Which of these phones is better? The A17 Pro here is a newer chip. It enables AAA gaming. If that's something big and very useful for you, then upgrade. The battery life is the same, about the same. The new cameras, in my opinion, are totally worth it. They are bigger, they are better. And of course, USBC is, in my opinion, the biggest change between these two phones. This phone can now be considered obsolete, in my opinion. In terms of course, the I/O, not the rest of the phone. The displays, the design, they are personal preference. Do you want to spend the extra money just because of the newer design? Let me know in the comments down below. While you're there, don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Sorry for that, I had to switch to my iPhone 15 Pro Max. So you just get a little video sample from the iPhone 15 Pro Max. You're lucky. But again, like I was telling you, let me know in the comments below what you think about these two phones. Will you upgrade? Would you upgrade from the iPhone 13 Pro Max to the iPhone 15 Pro Max? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. While you're there, don't forget to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.